everybody, and thanks for joining this Boston 25 news special, Marijuana in Massachusetts 5 years later. I'm Crystal Haynes. Recreational marijuana became legal in our state in 2016, and we're giving you an in-depth look at how the rollout is going here, from crime statistics to plans for door-to-door marijuana delivery in local neighborhoods. We'll even take you inside some local businesses that are thriving. We begin with the work getting the industry off the ground. In the last 5 years, the Cannabis Control Commission has granted 249 final licenses, and 122 marijuana retailers have opened in the state. And they've been making money here. Since November 2018, sales have grossed $45 billion, generating more than $90 million in sales tax alone to the state. Now, as the state grapples with this evolving industry, host community agreements in local cities and towns have come with their share of controversy. Let's start with the fight for clarity. For Vanessa Jean-Baptiste and Mark Bouquet, this former laundromat turned retail marijuana shop in Brockton is a clean start.
We've been through a lot of hurdles to get to this point. We never gave up, and we're just grateful that we're here.
One of the biggest hurdles, raising the capital. It takes an estimated $500,000 just to begin the process in Massachusetts, according to cannabis market research firm ArcView. Hurdle 2, finding a municipality to grant the host community agreement, or HCA, required to open.
It was very challenging because each municipality is different.
Under state law, municipalities may also require applicants to pay a community impact fee up to 3% to cover costs, quote, reasonably related to the pot shop's operations. But what reasonably means has not been made clear. One study found 79% of the state's host community agreements required payments exceeding the 3% limit. The report found many of the deals also called for voluntary donations to third-party charities. Concerns those costs would freeze out smaller cannabis companies and applicants in communities of color. The Massachusetts Grower Advisory Council petitioned the courts, asking that the Cannabis Control Commission be given the authority over the agreements instead of cities and towns.
It has been a point of contention. It's something that certainly serves as a hurdle or a barrier to entry into the marketplace, is being able to successfully navigate that element of our licensing process.
Executive Director Sean Collins says the commission has also asked the state legislature for that authority.
The industry tends to try to go to the state house to circumvent municipal authority because it's easier for them, and that's part of what businesses do all the time.
Mass Municipal Association President Jeffrey Beckwith says cities and towns have a right to any fee they impose, whether it's a pot shop or cable TV supplier.
Cities and towns have this authority to negotiate on behalf of the public interest, not the private interest.
Some towns are working it out on their own. Northampton is home to the first recreational marijuana store to open in the state. It stopped collecting community impact fees on January 1st. Mayor David Markowitz tells me they now have 4 pot shops, and they're treated like businesses with liquor licenses.
We've had a chance to see how it's operated. To me, it felt like we didn't need to collect it up front.
We are up to 120 employees.
Not all cannabis companies find themselves at odds with municipalities.
We were very fortunate with the towns that wanted to have us stuck to the HCA guidelines, 3% and no more.
The Rosefelds leveraged a century of business ownership in the state to secure HCAs for the Commonwealth Cannabis Company in 4 towns. Their cultivation facility is in Medway.
We grow the cannabis, we process the cannabis, we have a kitchen, we have a lab, we have retail, dispensaries. So we handle everything from planting seeds to final sale and everything in between.
We toured the ComCan hub and found everything from a production studio working on commercials for a pot-infused soda to an automated machine that packages bud for sale. For others to experience this type of success, President Ellen Rosefield tells me the state and the CCC need to figure out the regulation issues.
I believe it's the most difficult in any state to stay within its parameters. And the minute you think you've figured out how to do it, they come out with a whole new set.
And the Cannabis Control Commission tells me they're working to make this process less complicated. This month, Boston Mayor Kim Janey put a call out for training programs to be developed locally to support the cannabis industry. The city asked for proposals for technical assistance programs geared toward equity applicants. The mayor said the goal is to ensure that aspiring entrepreneurs have the tools they need to grow and thrive in the city of Boston. Well, marijuana delivered right to your door in Massachusetts, it's closer than you think.
Delivery is the next step, just because it's the new normal.
We'll show you how delivery would work right here and why it could add more equity to the industry. An increase in crime was one of the biggest concerns local communities had when it came to pot shops opening. We're sitting down with local police to look at the numbers and see the impact the legalization is having on crime when our in-depth look at marijuana in Massachusetts 5 years later returns. Welcome back to our in-depth special, Marijuana in Massachusetts. I'm Crystal Haynes. You know, during the pandemic, we've gotten used to getting everything delivered right to our door, and soon you'll be able to say the same about pot products. Marijuana delivery in our state has been in the works for a while, and we wanted to see what that will look like and how equity plays a role.
All these windows are all blocked.
Vehicle secure. Product secure.
The GPS unit, this actually is affixed to the vehicle.
Route secure and no crossing state lines.
So it updates every 3 seconds. You'll see where the car will move.
This is not your average vehicle inspection. Cannabis Control Commission Investigations Manager Dan Huber walked us through the requirements to put a marijuana delivery vehicle on the road outside CNA's store incorporated in Haverhill. CEO Robert DeFazio is helping an employee start a delivery business.
Delivery is the next step, just because it's the new normal.
The Cannabis Control Commission approved adult use marijuana delivery in 2019. Advocates argued delivery would help licensed businesses compete with the illicit market and lower financial barriers for minority applicants. For consumers, it means access to product without having to go to a brick and mortar location. There are 2 license types. A courier license, which works like your favorite third-party food delivery service. You order from a traditional brick-and-mortar dispensary and it's delivered to consumers for a fee. The second type is an operator license. Delivery businesses under this license have the ability to purchase products wholesale, sell them online, and deliver direct to your door. But there are rules here. All vehicles need to be unmarked, product on board cannot exceed $10,000, and deliveries can only be made on private property, no public housing developments or college campuses.
Just being that open with the communities that you're in is huge, because it sets a lot of people at ease. But not only that, it proves how secure this actually is.
For applicants, the delivery market means equity under the state law. Massachusetts is the only state with a diversity and social equity program baked into its legislation. Right now, social equity and economic empowerment applicants make up just 8% of all applications approved by the Cannabis Control Commission in the last 5 years, and just 9 have opened for business. Industry experts say with smaller startup costs, delivery business opportunities lower some barriers for applicants of color disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. Social equity applicants have exclusive access to cannabis delivery licenses.
These delivery licenses, they're set aside for equity applicants for the first couple of years.
Devin Alexander is the CEO of Rolling Leaf and the founder of the Massachusetts Cannabis Association for Delivery.
How many social equity applicants are current license holders? How many minorities are current license holders? And you can really just look at it like that. There's current legislation that has just been filed that will allow for a social equity trust fund, which is very crucial. That is a key component missing in Massachusetts social equity program. Access to capital is one of the top barriers.
Boston 25 was there as Pure Oasis opened in Boston's Grove Hall in March 2020, the first economic empowerment applicant to open in the state. I asked co-owner Kobe Evans if he believes the state is living up to its obligation under the equity provision.
Those that were close to the pain need to be close to the profits, and this is an exciting opportunity with delivery and creating pathways for people to address some of the issues around poverty and opportunity around being business owners and generational wealth.
Advocates tell me they want lawmakers to pass legislation that would create a state fund for social equity and economic empowerment applicants looking to enter the industry. Marijuana is still federally illegal, so cannabis businesses can apply for traditional bank loans. Now, we know that recreational marijuana has been legal here in Massachusetts for 5 years, but we wanted to see what the impact has been on crime in the state.
The biggest concern was that teen use would skyrocket.
We're digging through the stats with police to show you what's happened since pot shops opened in their communities. And later, how should we grade the rollout of marijuana in Massachusetts? I asked that question to a panel of people on the front lines of this industry. The range of grades they gave me when we get back. Massachusetts has implemented some of the strictest security provisions in the country in both marijuana industries and now the delivery space. But has it been enough? I spoke with law enforcement experts on the effort decriminalizing cannabis is having on community safety. From plant,
We have 70 strains.
to retail, to thoroughly inspected delivery vehicles.
So let's open this up.
Massachusetts has some of the toughest security requirements in the country for both the recreational and medical marijuana industry. And 5 years after the controversial voter referendum made adult-use marijuana legal,
Drug arrests, especially for marijuana, have decreased significantly over the years. Since decriminalization, again after medical marijuana passed, and then since adult marijuana use passed, it continues to decline.
incoming Newton Police Chief John Carmichael is on the state's Cannabis Advisory Board. Once an outspoken critic of the recreational market, he says drug arrests are down and traffic around pot shops and communities has not been a major issue.
Arrest rates in Massachusetts have been declining, and part of that, is associated probably with adult use legalization and medical marijuana, and less arrests taking place as far as in the drug side of things. But there's also been other issues with like mental health training, and we have protective custody laws now for drugs, which that affects arrest rates.
We took a look at the numbers. According to the latest FBI Uniform Crime Report, year over year, marijuana arrests dropped close to 18% nationally. And overall, they're down significantly from their peak a decade ago of more than 800,000 marijuana-related arrests a year. Here in Massachusetts, drug and narcotic arrests were also down 18% in 2020, with more than 5,100 arrests, according to available state crime data. Just over 10% involved marijuana seizures. Compare that to 2015, with more than 7,600 drug and narcotic arrests, with 20% involving marijuana seizures.
I don't think that legalization has had a dramatic effect on rates of use.
Matt Simon is a legislative analyst for the Marijuana Policy Project. He helped draft the 2016 legislation.
The biggest concern was that teen use would skyrocket, and that certainly hasn't happened. It's really been older Americans, really the 65 and older demographic is where we've seen the biggest increase of use.
But despite legalization, the FBI report also shows more people were arrested for cannabis in 2019 than for all violent crimes put together. Does it impact the ability to do your job, the more adult use, or have you noticed there's been an impact on like needing more officers or needing more drug training and things like that?
I'd have to say no, just because over the last 10 years or so, we've had a lot of different reform come in play.
The adult use industry has generated $1 billion in revenue for the state. A percentage of gross sales goes to help local law enforcement for training and staffing. Chief Carmichael says it's been a huge help to departments, but he still has his concerns over the industry's future.
I hope we don't get to the point where we have too many that, it affects the marketplace and that type of thing.
Now, the state conducted a focus group to see what the public knew about laws around adult use. And the top questions were, where can you and where you cannot smoke marijuana? What constitutes operating under the influence? And information about storing cannabis at home. The state has since begun a public education campaign. Now, the state is also creating a catalog with information about the marijuana products sold at the state's pot shops and dispensaries. The Cannabis Control Commission is putting together a website that will include include basic information and photos of legal cannabis products. The CCC says more than 122,000 products have already been cataloged in Massachusetts. Well, we know you may have a lot of questions or concerns about the rollout of recreational marijuana in our state, so we brought a panel together of the biggest players in the local industry together.
And I think that is a good model overall for the rest of the country in terms of creating opportunities, and I think that it will be monumental overall.
What they had to say about what's already going on here and what needs to happen next for the industry to thrive safely. After this. Welcome back to our in-depth special, Marijuana in Massachusetts 5 years later. We know people have a lot of questions and maybe even some concerns about how the industry is evolving in our state. So we brought together a panel to talk about it. Joining me is Northampton Mayor David Narkowitz, Cannabis Control Commission Chair Steve Hoffman, and Kobe Evans, co-owner of Pure Oasis in Boston's Grove Hall, the first economic empowerment applicant to open a retail marijuana shop. Welcome. What grade would you give the state's rollout, 5 years later? And I want to start with the chair here, putting you on the hot seat.
That's unfair. It's going to be tough to be modest in responding to that question. I would give us a B+. I think that the rollout has been remarkably smooth. We have 224 stores that or licenses that have been issued and opened. We've generated well over $1 billion of revenue and well over $200 million of tax revenue for the state. We've generated over 13,000 jobs. And we've done so with very few hiccups. So, I think we get credit for a smooth rollout, but we are very cognizant of the fact that we've got work to do.
It's definitely taken a little while for the process to get up to speed. I think we've definitely seen some great improvements. We have had many applicants here in Northampton. It's been challenging for many of them who are small entrepreneurs.
I do want to touch on the delivery license and the equity provision here. And we know that part of the reason why this delivery license type was actually created was in order to address some of the concerns that advocates, folks in the industry were speaking to making sure that we live up to this equity provision. Massachusetts is the only state in the country that has an equity provision baked into its laws. Kobe, I want to ask you, given you have been through the process, you're the first economic empowerment applicant to make it over the finish line, do you think that we have lived up to this equity provision?
It is a good kind of circuit breaker to allow for more people, and I think that it will be monumental overall as a good model for getting more people involved, whether they are owners of dispensaries or owners of delivery companies.
Chair, I know that this jurisdictional issue has been one where it's been controversial and you all are kind of stuck in the middle.
Our opinion is that we do not have jurisdiction over either the process of HCAs being issued or the contents of the HCAs. We have asked the legislature to give us that authority, and I'm pleased to report that legislation is pending. We'll see the outcome, but I believe that's an important part of the solution. But I think another part of the solution is the cities and towns themselves. I think that one of the things that's happened in the 2+ years since the first retail stores opened, including the first one in Northampton, is the cities and towns that are hosting marijuana establishments are seeing that they're well-run, good businesses, that they're assets to the community, they're creating jobs, they're creating economic development, and they're not creating new problems.
Mayor, why don't you talk to me about what that looks like in a municipality space?
We've had, I think, a fairly good amount of experience as, having, I think, the second medical dispensary in the state and the first retail store in the state, and we aren't seeing the impacts. And so we've taken the position that we don't want to create an additional barrier.
I'm looking for these businesses to be viewed as normal, well-run, good businesses, good neighbors throughout the state, generating, as I said, jobs and tax revenue and economic development. The medical community has not really been involved in helping their patients gain access to this drug, and I think we are under realizing the potential of helping people, helping citizens of the state and their health. And I really do hope and expect that over time we'll see more involvement to the medical community in the medical marijuana program.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Crystal.
All right, for continuing coverage, visit Boston25news.com. There you'll find our entire series looking at this rollout and links to the studies and reports that we've mentioned here. Hey, thanks for joining us for this Boston 25 News special, Marijuana in Massachusetts, 5 years later. I'm Crystal Haynes. For all of us here at Boston 25 News, be well and be safe.